Fáilte go dtí an episód sa Cheis na Teangan. Podcrail Finghin Mac agus a star de aine atá fistrucht faoi our gadribh léithí agus a role in our bhéanúlacht. Welcome to the Language Question, a podcast about the Irish language and its history for anyone curious about our relationship with it and its role in our identity. Maris Gnáach, bí cinnte a chlárú ag thelanguagequestion.com/resources chun de acmhainní fálam to Saoirneasca a all agus a bheith ar an eolas faoi gachród atá ar siúl ar an show. As usual, please be sure to sign up at thelanguagequestion.com/resources to be sure to get your complimentary, valuable learning resources and to stay up to date with upcoming episodes, guests, and to receive exclusive content. Peish Gaeilge, Shulling, Gomwena tú soltas. Anyhow, here goes. I hope you enjoy it. Aedín Ní Thiarnaigh is a television presenter and fluent Irish speaker with over 15 years' experience in broadcast media. She has fronted numerous programs for both RTE and TG Car and is widely recognised for her social media platform, Bláthanna Fiáine, celebrates the folklore and heritage of Ireland's wildflowers. Originally from County Wexford, Aedín now lives on Inis Meáin in the Aran Islands, where she works as an Irish language columnist and translator. Aedín a cara tá fáilte is fitheróta go dtí an show agus tá tharbheith buíoch díot as a bheith linn.
Gurb míle magat.
Aedín, I am so delighted and honoured to have you here with us today, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know you have an extraordinarily busy schedule. Aedín, what I'd love to do at the start, if you don't mind, as I do with all of the guests here on the show, is to go back to the beginning and just to talk about your experience with the Irish language. What did that look like for you growing up, and how has it evolved as you've gone on in life?
Well, yeah, it's a good question, and it's something people definitely say when they meet me here in Inis Meáin. And they say, oh, are you from the island? Because they'd be speaking in Irish. And I say, oh, not at all, we're from Enniscorthy, which wouldn't really be known as a hub for the Irish language. But my family they have strong connections to the Irish language, especially my dad's side of the family are from Limerick City and would have been very involved with this social group in Limerick called An Railth in Limerick City. And so my mum and dad did speak Irish, and my granddad was involved in that as well. So they kind of were, very báúil to the language. And then the most, I suppose, key turning point in the whole language journey was when I had just finished 6th class. That summer, there was a parish trip in Enniscorthy to Australia. And my mum and dad wanted to go, and I was too young to be brought with them. So they said, right, we'll send her to the Gaeltacht. Even though 12 was a bit young and it wouldn't have been a very common thing at that stage. But off I was packed to Coláiste in Ballybunion, North Kerry, which unfortunately is no longer in operation. But again, our family had strong links with it. My granddad used to be involved. It was one of my dad's first jobs, like when he was in college and that as well, working there in the Coláiste. So off I was shipped to Coláiste and I learned absolutely no Irish, but I had great time. And that then, when I was going into secondary school then, I was more interested in learning Irish because I had had that kind of positive social experience. And every summer then, while I was in school, I would go back and I would do a course of Gaeilge. And genuinely, and he had Steve Liam, I still wasn't learning any Irish, I was just there for the crack.
But having the crack, yeah.
Every September when I would come back to school, I would be interested. And I was lucky. I went to Coláiste in Enniscorthy, which is an English medium school, but I had a wonderful Irish teacher. Eleanor Harper was absolutely fantastic. And I had her all the way from first year to 6th year, and she was an excellent teacher. And in fact, all the teachers that teach Irish in that secondary school, even though it was an English medium school, were very, very good. And my classmates, all of us leaving 6th year, we were all really good. We were well able to have a conversation. I don't know whether it was an urban myth or not, but I remember when we were doing the Screw to Habeel for the leaving cert, there was a rumour going around that there was going to be an issue. So many people got A's in their Irish oral that maybe they'd be looking into it. So the Antálium Savalachshin, that I had such a good teacher in school, but also I was having all of those positive experiences every summer. And then all I wanted to do was Irish. I really felt very strongly about it. One of the years that I was in the Coláiste, I kind of had this eureka moment that always stayed with me. One of the teachers was there and, you know, we were very disinterested or whatever, I suppose, this particular day. And he said, nach diggin shiv a chorda. He said, Bíon Frankish ag na Franki, Idolish ag na Hidali, Garmánish ag na Garmánig, agus Cárthaigh muintir na Héireann ach béarla. And the fact that every other country or most countries, they have their own language. Italian speaking Italian, German speaking German, and for the Irish people to be speaking English. I was just like, oh, you know, even at 14, I was like, that's just wrong, you know? So then my ears were ready. You know, I was much more interested then in learning it. But like, I teach Irish here now in Inis Meáin to adults who come and do courses and to people who move to the island who obviously moving to the Gaeltacht, they're interested in learning the local language and dialect. And like I always say to them, you'll be learning your whole life. Like learning a language is like learning a musical instrument. You will always be learning, you'll always be improving. And it's just a journey to be enjoyed, but it's also hard work. And I have like, when people say to me now, they're like, oh my gosh, so the chuid Gaeilge ar house. I'm like, yeah, I've been like slaving away at it for a long time.
That's not accidental, like, yeah.
It is hard work. Like you sort of need to be quite dedicated. It's not an accident. I've done an awful lot of courses. Like I went and I did my undergrad in UL and I came out and I remember being so disappointed. I was like, I thought my Irish would be so much better after doing a degree.
Did you study it? You studied at degree level then at undergraduate?
Yeah, I did. And I still felt coming out that I could be a lot better. And I went working then in media straight out of college. And even then I did so many Gaeltacht courses, kind of intensive grammar courses just to really sharpen up. And even then, like I was writing, you know, I was working, like I had a really good career in the media, living my life as Gaeilge, and I was like, I'm still not there. I'm still not sharp enough. And I was living in Inis Meáin and I was like, I'm still not quite where I'd like to be. So actually, you know, I went and I did then a diploma Iarchéime in NUIG in 2022 in translations. And I consider myself to be quite good now after all of that. Ach ober vor, ober hanibuf, ober shrua, definitely.
Well, the dedication you've shown to it is just simply extraordinary. But can you tell me just in terms of growing up and you know when you were doing it at school and had this great educational experience with the language and developed a huge interest in it as well. What did it look like outside of education for you? Like, did you speak Irish at home at any stage, or would you have spoken with friends? Was it something that you used outside of the actual education system when you were growing up?
No, not really. Like I say, Mom and Dad had Irish, but when we were very young, it's just like if they wanted to say something to each other that they didn't want us to understand. But like, it wasn't our language at home. And you know, when I was like, let's say now when I was in college, absolutely slogging away, trying to learn all the delightful exceptions and rules of grammar and Irish and declensions and various things, I'd be saying, like, like, why didn't we speak Irish at home? Like maybe you know, it would give us such a boost. But like, I really don't feel like that at all now. I feel like if we had been forced to speak Irish at home, or even if I was in a Gael school or any of those things, I you know, teenagers, I could have totally rebelled against it. Like I chose to work at it. I know I was shipped off to Ballybunion when I was 12 or whatever, but like really I chose the language and I decided to do it. And if I didn't have that agency, I don't know, would I be where I am today? So a little bit of reverse psychology. It's this Mahan Rode. Yeah.
No, it's really, really exceptional and just such a wonderful thing to have done. But tell me, you studied it at degree level, and then you came out and you went into media. Did you go straight into working in Irish language media? Was that where you always wanted to work? How did that kind of evolve for you?
Like, yeah, I knew from a very early age, like not like when I was a child or anything, but from early in secondary school, shall we say, I wanted to work in radio, actually was my dream. And yeah, I've been on the radio for a long time. Like when I was 15 years old, we were producing a local radio program for teenagers on Southeast Radio. It was a great experience. And even at that time, I was getting into the Gaeilge, and I was always saying to them, we should be putting a bit of Irish in the program. They'd be like, absolutely not, Aedín, this is Wexford, maybe trying to sneak it in. And then, yes, I wanted to work in Irish, and that would have been my goal. So my degree in UL, I did a degree that doesn't exist anymore. It was a joint arts degree with Irish and then a small number of subjects you could choose. So I did Irish and journalism, but the journalism was through English and the Irish was through Irish. So I was actually in the first ever intake of the TG Cahir graduate scheme. It had just started when I came out of college in 2018. And I say, I was so lucky because it was a great opportunity, but also all the young graduates that are going into those jobs now, they're high profile and they all have to get headshots done, and they're written up in their local newspapers, and there's this whole intern TG Cahir phenomenon, which was not the case at all when we started. And I feel so lucky. I just got to fly under the radar, and I went in and I spent a year and a half in TG Cahir in Ballynahowan, and yeah, that was also a wonderful experience to get to go straight working in the Gaeltacht,
Oh, wow. And tell me, Aedín, because you have a special connection with Inis Meáin, and you have the absolute incredible good fortune to live there, and it's one of my favourite places on the planet. It's an extraordinary place. Could you tell, well, first of all, how did you end up, Inis Meáin, how did that come about?
So in one of the lockdowns, COVID-wise, around that time, I was doing a lot of work just as a hobby, really, in the folklore of our Irish wildflowers and their Irish language names especially. And that was just a passion of mine that I got really into. And because I had been working freelance and then COVID came and there wasn't a lot of job opportunities, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to go back to education. And I just felt like I kind of had a free pass to do something that I just wanted to do for fun. And I saw this fantastic master's in UCD in Irish folklore and ethnology. And I thought, I'm doing so much research into the folklore anyways, I might as well actually just get a bit of paper out of it,
Yeah.
And it was not a career move. I didn't think I'd get any work out of it. It was just life is definitely going to be quiet for another year. And I kind of felt like I was a couple of years out of college at that stage, and I love learning. I just love it. And I felt it would be lovely to, even though I was obviously learning practical work skills, I felt it was a long time since I had studied and kind of done academic learning. And I was like, I'd love to just delve into this. It would be such a treat to do for a year. And that's what I did. So I did that master's, and for my thesis, we had to pick a specialist subject. And when I was in TG Cahir working as a video journalist with Mulch Gale, which was also quite a new thing at the time, one of the videos that I made was I came and I did a digital package with Maureen Finghin Mac Cárthaigh in Inis Meáin about an Bhrídeog, which is a special tradition in Inis Meáin on St. Bridget's Eve. And I had done that video with her. And when I was doing the masters, we were learning about St. Bridget's Day traditions. And I was like, and what about the Bhrídeog in Inis Meáin? And I kind of discovered then that people really didn't know a lot about it. There was very little written about it. There was very little, literature on it.
It's funny because I was at a conference around the start of February, around Lila Breda, and it was actually Maureen's daughter was there in UCC from Inis Meáin. And she showed a clip from that, I think, from that video that you must have made. But would you mind just explaining to people, because the Bhrídeog, it's a very specific tradition to Inis Meáin. Most people will be familiar with the Crossog and the St. Bridget's Cross is one for around St. Bridget's Day. But the Bhrídeog is a very distinctive tradition, especially on Inis Meáin.
So yes, the Bhrídeog used to exist in more parts of Ireland, but it really has died out in most places. Some places are trying to revive it a little bit, but in Inis Meáin, it has been here for as long as people can remember. And basically, it's a tradition that is just for the young girls of the island. So girls that are still of primary school age, they have a Bhrídeog, which is a straw effigy of Niamh Bríd, dressed in beautiful bright clothes in the style of Inis Meáin and bedecked with beautiful jewellery and all sorts of things. And they visit every house in the island on the eve of St. Bridget's night. So that's the 31st of January. And they have a special prayer and they bless each of the houses. They bring the blessing of St. Bridget in. And it's a whole thing. It's a whole ritual. It's very, very important. So I had done this video, and then when we were in college, it transpired there was so little research done into it that I said, great, that's what I'll do for my master's thesis. And I got a scholarship from UCD, the Dunlow Moran Scholarship Bursary, to come and spend a month on Inis Meáin doing fieldwork, which is what I did. And I had a wonderful time. I came May, June 2021, just at the tail end of COVID. And I spent that summer then. I went back to the mainland, spent an awfully hard time writing up my big long thesis, which is a very lonely piece of work to do. If any listeners
I can
have
relate
ever
to
done
that. Yes, I've just done one last year and I can totally relate to that experience.
Really rough, and like I was so broke as well because you can't work like when you do a full time write this thing. And yeah, even though it was a wonderful opportunity, I was like really burnt out at the end of that summer, and I was just dreaming, wouldn't it be so nice to just go back to Inis Meáin and not be like tearing around the island on my bike trying to get interviews, if I could just go back and just enjoy it and just have a rest. And so that's what I did. I took a house for a month to just decompress and recover, and I had a wonderful time. That's September 2021, and then the house was like available. Still the tail end of COVID, you know, the off season. It was a holiday house. People weren't booking in. So I was like, well, why would I leave before Christmas? And then the house is available. So why would I leave before the summer? And the house was available following year. So I took it again in the off season for the following year. And at that stage, I was still really young at that time. Like I was 25. And before that, anytime I had left one place to go to another place, it was because I got a job when you'd move for work. So when I was here, I was like, it felt so bizarre to kind of think, well, maybe instead of going somewhere for a job, I could pick the place first and then just make work for that. So I was like, better just go on the main Inis Meáin and I'll just see what I can do. So I was doing a lot of writing that time anyways, and I was just doing a little bit of freelance television work, and I was like, I could afford to be a bit broke and just work things out. And like that, I just went and I did some extra Irish courses, and the second year I was like a bit too broke. So I was like, right, I really need to diversify my options. So that's why I went back and did the additional degree in translations to kind of boost my opportunities on the island to stay here, but also make a bit of a better living. And yeah, to my Fós and Shaw, I'm in a different house now because that was a holiday house that got taken back. But I've been here, I'm going to be 5 years in September.
Wow.
So that's crazy. But to my ancestor, you know, Tantalia.
Living the dream. I mean, it's incredible. And I suppose, maybe just for listeners, would you mind just giving us a little bit of context here? Because I'm very familiar with where you are and how extraordinarily lucky you are to be there. But you want to explain for listeners, Inis Meáin, it's the middle island of the Aran Islands. Would you just give us a little bit of the context of the island and why it is so special and beautiful there?
Well, it's the middle island, like you say, but it's got the lowest population by quite a lot. The 2022 census in Inis Meáin says like 180 people, but actually that's a little bit higher, I would say, perhaps, than what may be reflective of the true local population. So, for example, we're really lucky in the island. We have a wonderful secondary school called Coláiste Naomh Owen, which attracts a lot of students who come to learn Irish and to engage in the culture, but they're boarders from everywhere and anywhere. A lot of people come from Dublin. So that night of the census, the secondary school students were on the island. So that could have been maybe an extra 40 people. So really your base population of people who live here are from here is closer to maybe 150, 160, which is very small. But the island is big, it's beautiful, it's quite rugged. It's the Aran Islands, even though they're in the administrative region of County Galway, it's the landscape of County Clare. They would have at some point way back when broken off from the Burren, and that's why we have the karst landscape here of limestone. That's why we have such amazing flora, because of unique landscape. And it is the island that has historically always been most connected with the past, and that's because of its physical location. It's got no really easy access point for landing. Even today, like, we have a great ferry service from the Aran Island ferries in Russellville. They really look after us, and we also have great service from Aran that comes from Indrone. But like, up until the end of the 80s, the ferry services still had to anchor in the bay. And every man, woman, child, cow, barrel of porter got hefted down from the big ferry into curraghs that were rowed into the island by local fellas. And it wasn't until the 2000s that the new pier was built that there is. And so it's really not that long ago that the boat couldn't even come into the pier, that they weren't even piers here. And because Inis Meáin is the middle island, the stretches of sea between the islands, they're called sounds. And the sounds in the Aran Islands, the Fowl Sound and Gregory Sound, are particularly treacherous waters because, like, it's nothing between the Aran Islands and America. So you've got that raw force of the Atlantic is being channeled then with a lot of pressure into these small, narrow channels. And that creates very treacherous current and rough seas, dangerous seas, which made travel between the islands very difficult, except for kind of in the summertime when there'd be calm weather. People could come and go on the curraghs, but like really not that often. Like, it was a very special occasion to travel between the islands. So for all of those reasons, Inis Meáin was much more difficult to travel to than Inisir or Inishmore. And because of that, the people were really isolated, you know, and because they were so physically isolated from services, they became very, very independent and resourceful. And they're really clever people here as well. They learned how to work with what they had. But that independence then led to traditions in the island really remaining very strong. So one of the big elements of that is the language. So people would often say, and going way back when, like people like W.B. Yeats, like Pádraig Mac Cárthaigh, if their friends wanted to learn Irish, they'd be like, take the Inis Meáin. It was considered, even at that time, to be connected with the past. Even at that time, like even when John Millington Synge was knocking around, like in the early 1900s, he was told, go to Inis Meáin, that's where the best Irish is. And because it was considered like not to be polluted, which is kind of an awful word, but you know what I mean? Like, it was unaffected by change, the most true form perhaps. And that's Inis Meáin. I mean, we have a lot of services today. We're not still knocking around like in...
No, but and it is true, and it is. I think it's the most wonderful place in the world. It's. I just think you're extraordinarily. I've been incredibly jealous of the fact that you've been able to. I mean, the beautiful idea you've created there of saying, why do I go chasing work all over why don't I just live in Inis Meáin and kind of like design my life around being here is absolutely inspired. But I want to just give a little bit of counter point to that, if you don't mind, because I mean, I could idealize and just absolutely adore Inis Meáin. It's an absolutely fantastic place. It's an absolutely magical place. I mean, the landscape itself is just indescribable. It's particularly on the south side of the island. But by the same token, I don't want to romanticize the Gaeltacht life experience, because it's something you've kind of alluded to there, and I'm just very interested in your take as somebody who has moved from Enniscorthy, from the southeast of Ireland to Inis Meáin. Somebody who's moved from the Gaeltacht to the Gaeltacht. That's quite a unique kind of perspective and take on things, and it's an extraordinary commitment to the language itself. But you have an insight from that, I think, into what Gaeltacht life is like, that certainly I think most people living outside the Gaeltacht won't have the faintest notion of. Because while I'm sure it's incredible, it's an extremely challenging life as well. And I know from speaking to people here on the show over the years, they'll have said to me, look, I have no worries about the language. The language will look after itself. It'll develop and evolve. And you have the global kind of community speaking the language in so many different ways. But the thing that they're really worried about is the Gaeltacht and the pressure that the Gaeltacht is under and the challenges that Gaeltacht communities face. And would you mind just talking, and I suppose, and an island population and particularly an island like Inis Meáin, which is so remote, which has been so good for many of the preservation elements of the language and culture that you've spoken about. But how do those challenges manifest for you and for the community you live in now for the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, well, there are challenges like from day to day. Logistically, you need to be a very organised person, like to live on an island. We've got 2 ferries a day. You've got a very early ferry at 8:15 in the morning, and you've got another ferry that leaves at 4:45. And Sinead, if you miss them, you're goosed. But anyone can get used to that. That's fine. You also need to have like a very big freezer.
Yeah.
You need to be able to look after yourself. You need to be able to feed yourself through the winter, like when there's no pub doing food or anything here. In terms of the bigger problems, in terms of like, issues affecting the Gaeltacht, like housing is the biggest problem. Inis Meáin is particularly suffering. Some people say like, is it Airbnb and holiday houses and all these things? And like, I'm not an expert on this topic, but from my understanding here, we don't have too many holiday houses. That's not necessarily the problem. The real problem here is vacant homes. And it's upsetting, really. There are a lot of the real true islanders, young people who were born and raised here, who would love to move home and live on the island, work in island development, and they can't find anywhere to live. And these vacant homes, like there's a variety of issues. I don't have any solutions, but it is going to choke Gaeltacht, like these issues of vacant homes. And for example, they could be historic homes, derelict homes that maybe the person who died last in the family didn't have a will. Or it could be owned by 3 or 4 people, brothers and sisters who are in America, in England, and I don't know how to handle that. Nobody really does. There's the Galway County Council have a derelict home project and everything like that, but I just don't see, it's not an easy fix, and it is a massive issue. And like Bonu and Gaeltacht are doing wonderful, wonderful work in Connemara, like raising these issues and the need for like, if you don't have homes in the Gaeltacht, you can't have people in the Gaeltacht. And if you don't have people in the Gaeltacht, then our intangible heritage is going to go down the toilet. So that's a big problem. There are people working on it. Corn and Ilon are another group that are absolutely wonderful, working for the Gaeltachtaí and for the islands in particular, tackling these issues. There's a lot of surveys and research going on at the moment. So Lacoon of Day, something will come of it. Progress will be made. Because it is really, really encouraging here. Like even in the last few years, the Gaeltacht Ferberhan in Inis Meáin is doing total gosh. They've got really ambitious plans for the island. And similarly, like the Clan Altanga. So Clan Altanga is an Udarosna Gaeltacht funded operation where in each Gaeltacht and in each Baile Service Gaeltacht there is a language officer whose job is to promote the use of the living language. So we're really lucky to have a wonderful Ifigachlan Altanga in Inis Meáin, Maureen Concannon, and a great Bonastor Ferberha, and just a really good team and like of young, vibrant people. And there's so many people, like there's even a new business on the island just opened maybe 2 weeks ago, Ruhi in Inis Meáin. We now have e-bikes. Like that's a young man from the island in his 20s setting up a vibrant, needed tourism service, which will hopefully have a really positive impact on the island. So while there is massive problems which are daunting and can seem insurmountable at time, there is a lot of progress being made, and there is like Tofunyaf Sinilon, Todina Agira Agwajiana, and I think it's going to be okay if things continue as they are and if progress continues to be made.
And I believe we have, because I mean, one of the things that's I've always felt desperately sad about on the island was the Ostan that was vacant there for many years. But I believe there is now an inner culture about to be developed or starting in the old hotel there on the island.
Yeah, that's a great friend of mine. World class harpist Aedín Ní Thiarnaigh is my really good friend from the island. We both met here. Also moved to Inis Meáin during one of the lockdowns. She's originally from County Galway, and Una is a harpist, and she's a very pioneering thinker, a very brave woman. And ever since she came to the island, she had, like yourself, Finghin, she'd her eye on that building and said, what a shame, so much potential. And when it did eventually come on the market, she just said, Tumachan and Desha a hapu. And so she diary Leahy and she bought it, and she's got fantastic plans for it to be made into an Uned Cultura. So it's going to be a cultural centre, but centred around courses where there's 10 bedrooms and There'd be a course perhaps in harp music. There'd be a course in Orlaíocht or Sean-Nos. There could be a course in dry stone wall building. Like cultural courses rooted in the language or the culture and open to other possibilities as well, where people will come to the island, stay for a week and leave with a connection to the place, leave with a skill, leave with a connection to Irish culture, and hopefully come back and also again add to the vibrancy of the community in a sustainable way.
Phenomenal. And one of the things that they also could do if they went to Inis Meáin is to do a wildflower tour with you, which was my extreme privilege to be able to do last year. And I just, as we come to the end of the time we have together, I'd like just to touch on that because, okay, Gaeilge is one big, huge part of your life, but I think the whole area of wildflowers and the natural environment and so on is another huge piece of that. How do you see those two things kind of fitting together in your life?
Well, I'm only interested in the wildflowers because of the Irish language. Now, I mean, they're lovely. They're lovely to look at and everything. But yeah, it was when I was in my 20s, I was out walking with my Limerick granny one day. We're in Ballybunion and she's really interested in flowers and gardening. And we used to look at the wildflowers on our little walk and we might pick a few or take photos of them and come back then to the caravan in Ballybunion and look them up in the flower book. So, Sinna rinne muid an lá seo, and yeah, I was probably 20 or 21 or whatever. And the bhíonn chéadúir, you know, that I looked at the flower name and then there's the Latin name and then there's the Irish name. And it was the first time in my life I was able to understand the Irish names. Like before then, they were just something else in italics, like the Latin that I didn't understand. And I was like, oh my God. Like I know one of them was like Cluis Lachoige, little mouse ear. I was like, oh, it's so beautiful. It was so different to the English, which was like chickweed or something. And so then sure, I was like flying through the book, looking at all the Irish names to see, were they different? Was there anything to learn from them? My key kind of core point with everything I do with like my wildflower tour business and things like that is our native Irish plants, their native Irish names are a direct link to our intangible heritage. Like the Irish language is maybe as old as 2,500 years, and the native plants in this country are here just as long, if not longer. And if we learn them and view them through their Irish language names, it's just the key to our heritage. We see how people in Ireland view the world. We see what was important to them, and like we get so many clues about the plants through their Irish names, whether it's just a memory aid, how to recognise them, they look like something, or it could tell us maybe a hint about what the plant does, like something like Bláthanna Fiáine is spurge in English, but Bláthanna Fiáine in Irish is the wart flower, and it's a cure for warts, and all these different things are something like Aedín Ní Thiarnaigh, you know, the foxglove, and the foxglove is associated with the fairies because the fairies were dangerous and foxgloves are dangerous. And if you ingest foxgloves, they can kill you. And things that were dangerous and mysterious and could kill you and were dark were attributed to the fairies. And like, it's just a beautiful, beautiful way to fall into a rabbit hole of culture and heritage, and so readily available by just looking at simple names for things that are growing wild all around us in a way that anyone can access, really. It's not, you don't need a degree in Irish to engage with the native plant names and our native species. There are weeds, they're everywhere.
Oh, it's incredible. And it's again, it's this beautiful thing that the name in Irish, when we understand the Irish words that are behind the name, makes sense and have that, there's a whole kind of cultural sort of connection there. Whereas the Irish language name is translated into English, as with many place names, are kind of gobbledygook, don't make any sense. But if we understand the actual words behind them, it makes complete sense, and it has a whole kind of cultural connection. I'm reminded actually of there's a great book by a man, Michael Cronin, called An Gaeilge agus an Ecologiacht. Yeah, and he makes this connection between ecology and the language and so on. And it's absolutely fascinating. It's there's an incredible connection between the two.
Certainly, yeah. And they're thought she'd fit you food to Mara Dearha.
Yeah. Aedín Ní Thiarnaigh, that it is just so wonderful to talk to you, and we could talk all evening. Unfortunately, we don't have time to speak for as long as I would love to. But what I would love to do, just as I ask every guest here as you wrap up the show, is around your Irish language why. I mean, you've spent so much of your life now committed to the language, learning the language, doing an extraordinary amount of hard work in doing so, as you described to us. You moved to the Gaeltacht, lived there, have built your life around that. Why do you do all of that, and what motivates you in relation to the language?
Well, a lot of it definitely does go back to that day in like the classroom in Cloistebreen and the fact that the French are speaking French and the Italians are speaking Italian. I just really feel like Irish people should be speaking Irish, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a shame that it's a challenge. It's a shame that we were colonised and that our language was taken from us, and that's had such a negative impact on how people view the language and their connection to it and all of that. But really, at this stage in the game, I just enjoy it. Like, I love it. It brings me joy. I love that I can continue to learn. I learned like a few new words today, you know, Tá má fúla magónaí, tá má bródúil. It makes me proud to be able to speak Irish, but mostly, yeah, at this stage in the game, it's just such a big part of my life that I couldn't actually separate it. And a lot of the time, I mean, I know we're talking about Irish now, but normally I would avoid these conversations. I don't need people telling me how they feel about the Irish language and problems about it, or issues they've had and all the bad teachers they have. Like, I just don't care. You know, I'm just living my life.
Yeah.
And my language of choice is Irish. Agus sin an teanga I got my hair on, and that's how I would like to live. And, you know, not to be always talking about the language, just living life in the language.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that is possibly one of the best answers I've had to that question. And Mahu, Aedín Ní Thiarnaigh, winis ansultas an scéal a rain túlin, gur of míle mahagut fui sin berbua agus banach ta cara.
Gur míle mahagat hain agus fáilte rút.
Thanks for listening. Gur of míle mahagut as a bheith éisteacht. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would really appreciate your feedback and would be eternally grateful if you would follow, rate and review the show. Please also be sure to sign up at thelanguagequestion.com/resources to get your free valuable learning resources and to stay up to date with upcoming episodes, guests and to receive exclusive content. Slán Tom.